Did you know that old cars, and particularly classic cars, actually pollute less than new ones, and especially brand new EVs? What? So you know all this legislation that governments are trying to put in place to try and get old cars, and in some cases classics like these, off the roads? I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute. Can we just have a little think about this? Because according to a recent report, these classic cars in particular produce annual CO2 emissions of 563 kilograms. That's for the whole year. When you look at a brand new car, as the brand new car is driven off the showroom floor, or out of the showroom if you like, it's already got a 6.8 ton carbon footprint. How is that possible? That's down obviously to the way that obviously the raw materials are accessed and mined and transported to produce the car, the production of the car, then the transportation of the car and the distribution of the car to you. All of that has to happen, and that in itself has a carbon footprint of 6.8 tons. That's before you've turned the wheel in anger till you've got that car. Now if you think that's bad, hold on for this next stat. And this is true, by the way, and even manufacturers, I think even Volvo recently put this on their own website. Compared to that, a typical EV, 26 tons of emissions by the time you get the car. That's before you've driven it. That's a lot. Now, to be fair, this is not a rant against electric cars. I mean, electric cars, to be honest, they definitely have their place. They are going to do a lot of good for the environment. And the reality is that in an urban environment, the fact that they have no emissions is better for the environment. It's better for our health. It is better all round. We can argue, till the end of time about where the energy is coming from and the true cost of all of that. But the reality is that in the longer term, it would actually even out, to be fair. However, the other thing that we now know, after quite a few years of people buying and running electric cars, and in some cases hybrids as well, is that the rate of turnover, and by that I mean how long an owner keeps their car, is actually much lower on electric cars. And the reason for that is actually quite obvious, because the pace of technology with electric cars at the moment is so fast. It's developing so quickly. How good the batteries are, how long the range is that you're going to get, what's the sort of performance you're going to get, what the quality of the car is, the practicality of the car. All of these things are changing and developing so quickly that as soon as a new EV is put out, 6 months later, it's old tech, because something else better has come along. It's a lot like iPhones and other technology. It's like a tech car, right? So it's that sort of stuff. And yes, there are over-the-air updates and things that you can do, but fundamentally we're talking about drivetrains and battery packs. And even like I was talking to somebody from a subscription service recently, and I was like, how long are people keeping hold of electric cars? And they're like, no, they're just like a couple of years, because the next new thing is coming along, so there's no point keeping hold of it that long. And the thing is that actually, that's a little bit of an issue, because what's happening to those cars? Yes, again, we're not going to get into the whole thing about recycling batteries. There are uses for those batteries. Batteries are being used for conversions to other cars, such as classics, or they're being used as home energy storage devices and stuff like that. So there are things that can be done that are, reducing the impact of the wastage in that sense. But to have that level of turnover when it comes to new cars, that's still a hell of a lot of wastage that's going on. By comparison, when you think about it, something like this, based on the stats that I've just given you, this would take 46 years to put out the same amount of emissions as that brand new EV. And this one is only 33 years old. So this is why when it comes to things like ULEZ, I've got such a bee in my bonnet about that. I've done a couple of videos on that. You can check those out. I'll put the links in the description. I've got such an issue. I think we really need to think about this more carefully, because one of the aspects of ULEZ is the idea that we'll introduce a scrappage scheme, and that will encourage people to get rid of their old cars and buy new ones. Well, then we're just increasing that rate of consumption when we're getting everybody to try and switch to brand new cars, A, and B, the longevity of those existing cars is actually a good thing for the environment. They say that that one of the best cars in terms of how good it is for the environment is something like an old Jeep or a Series 1 Land Rover, because of the length of its existence. You see, because the thing is, like, as you have just seen from those stats on the new cars, the biggest carbon footprint for a car is created actually at the production of the car. Once you've got the car, actually that's when things start to get better, because you're not putting out that much, relatively speaking. So when you think about an old car, all that's already gone into the production of the car, from there on, the more you're using it, in a weird way, the more beneficial it is actually to the environment, because you're keeping that car in use. You're not having to replace it and yet use up more resources in order to do that. So again, we need to think carefully about things like ULEZ and about car scrappage schemes, because what it actually means is that we're getting perfectly usable and good cars off the road for no reasons. We have the issue with emissions in cities, but as I've said in a previous video, I think you'll find that is changing quite a lot. If you look at the live maps of pollution in London, for example, the outer London area is well below international standards. It's actually fine. And the other thing is, of course, that when you think about the fact that actually the average age of a car in the UK now is about 8.5 years, that means most of those cars are falling into the latest emission standards and therefore are not actually polluting as much as the older cars. We're already in that scenario. So the race to get rid of more of the old cars, I think, is actually redundant, and actually we're entering into an era of diminishing returns. So this car for 46 years or a brand new EV? You tell me.
A big shout out and thanks to Jay Williams over at AirTechnic, who are top tier sponsors of Brown Car Guy. Check them out at AirTechnic Co UK for exhausts, brakes, suspension and body kits. Plus our other major sponsor, Nayajan Solutions. Much appreciation also to tier 4 sponsors, Muhammad Ali Humaid, Tom Conway Gordon and Reza Adil. And of course all these other guys who supporting on Patreon. Brown Car Guy is eternally grateful. Hey, think about joining them over at patreon.com Brown Car Guy. If you can't, don't worry. Just make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and website. Plus follow on social media by searching for Brown Car Guy.